Daiho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he moved another cargo container into place. The storage bay of the stellar horizon was always busy after a supply stop. Ships this size needed thousands of items to keep running, and someone had to organize it all. That someone was usually him. He was the security officer, but on a merchant vessel everyone did multiple jobs. Today his job was unpacking Earth cargo that had just arrived from the last station. Most of it was food supplies and equipment parts. Nothing exciting. The container in front of him had a label that said Recreation Human Quarters. Daiho opened it with his scanner. Inside, wrapped in protective plastic, were the training mats he had ordered 3 months ago. Finally. He had been wanting to practice his taekwondo forms, but the metal floors of the ship were too hard and cold. He pulled out the first mat. It was thick, blue, and smelled like new rubber. Perfect. He set it aside and reached for the second one. That was when he heard the noise. A small chirping sound came from behind a stack of boxes. Daiho turned slowly. 2 small creatures peeked out at him. They were cubs from the Kilari family that lived on Deck 7. Each cub was about the size of a large cat, covered in soft purple fur with huge round eyes that seemed to take up half their faces. "Hello there," Daiho said gently. He knew the Kilari were nervous around humans. Most aliens were, actually. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy. They were strong, aggressive, and unpredictable. At least that was what everyone said. The cubs chirped again. They seemed curious about the mats. "You want to see?" Daiho unrolled one mat on the floor. The cubs jumped back, startled by the sound. But their curiosity was stronger than their fear. They crept forward, tiny clawed feet making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. One cub touched the mat with its paw. It pressed down, feeling the soft cushion. Then it jumped onto the mat with all 4 feet. The other cub followed. They bounced experimentally, delighted by the springy surface. Daiho smiled. "You like it?" "It is pretty comfortable." The cubs began wrestling with each other on the mat, rolling and tumbling. They made happy chirping sounds. Daiho watched them for a moment, then went back to unpacking. He had 5 more containers to go through before his shift ended. But when he turned back to check on the cubs, they were gone. So was one of his mats. "Hey." Daiho looked around the storage bay. He saw a flash of purple fur disappearing through the doorway, dragging the blue mat behind them. "Wait, come back with that." He ran after them, but the cubs were fast. They pulled the mat down the corridor, chirping excitedly to each other. Other crew members pressed themselves against the walls as the cubs rushed past, the mat scraping along the floor behind them. Daiho chased them through 3 corridors before he lost them completely. He stopped, breathing hard, and leaned against the wall. Great. His first day with the new mats, and he had already lost one. Over the next hour, strange reports started coming through the ship's communication system. "This is Deck 4. There are cubs fighting in Corridor B. Request assistance. Deck 7 Medical Bay. We have cubs wrestling outside the entrance. They are blocking patient access. Engineering reports cubs roughhousing near the plasma conduits. This is a safety violation." Captain Hyejeon called Daiho to the bridge. She was a stern woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded the stellar horizon for 12 years and ran a tight ship. "Daiho, what is happening?" she asked. "I have 6 different departments reporting cubs causing chaos. This is not normal behavior." "I think it might be my fault, Captain," Daiho admitted. He explained about the training mats and how the Kilari cubs had stolen one. Hyejeon closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Show me." They walked to Deck 7, where most of the alien families lived. The corridor outside the Kilari living quarters was packed with creatures. Not just Kilari cubs, but younglings from 4 other species too. In the middle of the corridor, on Daiho's blue training mat, cubs were wrestling and tumbling over each other. They were not fighting. They were playing. But to the adult aliens watching with horrified expressions, it looked like violence. A tall Heveran parent pushed through the crowd. His scales were bright red with anger. "What is the meaning of this? Why are our children using human war equipment?" "War equipment?" Daiho looked confused. "It is just a training mat. For combat training," another parent shouted. This one was Trogian, massive and covered in thick gray skin. "You are teaching our cubs human violence." More voices joined in. The crowd of alien parents grew angrier. They surrounded Daiho, shouting in multiple languages. Universal translators struggled to keep up with all the different voices. Captain Hyejin stepped between Daeho and the angry crowd. She held up her hands. Everyone please calm down. Let us discuss this rationally. There is nothing to discuss. The voice came from the back of the crowd. It was Vorthan, one of the eldest members of the Mrenthi species on board. He moved forward slowly, his 6 legs carrying his large body with careful dignity. Humans are dangerous. Everyone in the galaxy knows this. Now they bring their weapons onto our ship and corrupt our young. It is not a weapon, Daeho tried to explain. It is for exercise and discipline. You train for combat. Vorthan interrupted. You prepare for war even in peacetime. This is the human way. And now you spread this disease to our children. The cubs, unaware of the adult drama, continued playing on the mat. They chased each other, tumbled, and chirped happily. Some tried to copy fighting moves they had seen the human crew members practice in the gym. Their attempts were clumsy and adorable, but to their parents it looked like the beginning of corruption. These mats must be removed from the ship immediately, Vorthan declared. They are a danger to our youth. Other parents agreed loudly. The corridor filled with angry shouts and demands. Captain Hyejin raised her voice. Enough, this is still my ship. We will handle this properly. Daeho, gather all the training mats and store them in the human quarters for now. Parents, please take your cubs back to your living areas. We will hold a council meeting tomorrow to discuss this issue. The crowd slowly dispersed, though many aliens gave Daeho dark looks as they collected their cubs. The younglings protested, not wanting to leave the fun mat behind. Some tried to drag it with them. Daeho rolled up the mat and carried it away. He felt terrible. He had only wanted to practice his forms, maybe teach some interested crew members. He never meant to cause an interspecies incident. But as he walked back to his quarters, he noticed something. The cubs had been happy. Really happy. Happier than he had ever seen any young aliens on the ship before. They had been playing together, different species, different worlds, different everything, all playing and laughing together. Maybe the adults were seeing danger where there was only joy. Maybe they needed to look more closely at what the cubs had actually found. Ambassador Sunho arrived at the stellar horizon the next morning. He had been summoned from the nearest diplomatic station specifically to handle what the alien delegates were calling the human aggression incident. When he stepped aboard, Captain Hyejin met him at the airlock with a tired expression. Thank you for coming so quickly, she said. Sunho nodded. He was an older man with gray in his hair and the patient manner of someone who had spent decades smoothing over cultural misunderstandings. I read your report. Training mats caused all this trouble? You would be surprised how easily things escalate in space, Hyejin replied. When you put dozens of species in a confined area, every small difference becomes magnified. They walked to the conference room where the council meeting would take place. Already, representatives from 6 different species waited inside. The room felt tense. Aliens sat on opposite sides of the table from the human crew members as if drawing battle lines. Vorthan spoke first, his deep voice filling the room. Ambassador Sunho, we appreciate your presence. However, we must be clear. This is not a negotiation. The human combat training equipment must be removed from this vessel. Our cubs' safety and moral development are not up for debate. Sunho sat down calmly. I understand your concern, but perhaps we should first establish what exactly this equipment is used for. Daeho, would you explain? Daeho stood nervously. He was much more comfortable with action than with speeches. The training mats are for practicing taekwondo. It is a Korean martial art. We use them so we do not hurt ourselves when we fall during practice. Combat art, Vorthan corrected sharply. You just admitted it is for fighting. Not just fighting, Daeho said. It is also about discipline, respect, and self-control. We bow to our teachers and partners. We learn to control our strength, not to abuse it. A Chilari representative spoke up, her voice high and musical. But you do learn to fight. You learn to hurt others. How is this appropriate for children to learn? Sunho stood. May I demonstrate something? Without waiting for an answer, he moved to an open space in the room. His movements were slow and deliberate as he performed a simple taekwondo form. His arms moved in blocking patterns. His legs stepped and kicked in controlled motions. But there was something almost dance-like about it. Peaceful even. What you see is not violence, Sunho said as he moved. You see meditation in motion. You see someone learning to master their own body and mind. Martial arts teach us to be calm in stressful situations. They teach us when to act and when to show restraint. Pretty words, Vorthan said. But the result is the same. You are teaching beings to fight. We are teaching them not to fight, Sunho replied, returning to his seat. That is the difference you do not see yet. Before anyone could respond, an alarm sounded. Emergency medical alert from Deck 9. Everyone rushed from the conference room. They followed the alert signal through the corridors until they reached the recreation area. A crowd had gathered outside the medical bay. Through the crowd, Daiho could see a small Heron cub crying while the medical officer examined its leg. The cub's parent, Kreltha, stood nearby with scales flushed dark purple with anger. When she saw the humans approaching, she pointed at Daiho accusingly. This is your fault. My child is injured because of your dangerous human activities. Medical officer Taewon looked up from examining the cub. He was young for a doctor, but very skilled. The injury is minor. Just a bruise on the leg. Nothing serious. Kreltha's voice rose. My cub tried to perform one of those violent human kicks and fell. This never would have happened without your influence. Daiho felt guilt wash over him. A child had been hurt because of the mats he brought aboard. But Taewon asked quietly, Where did your cub try to do this kick? Kreltha hesitated. In our quarters. On the sleeping platform. On a hard surface, Taewon observed. If the cub had used the training mat, the fall would have been cushioned. The injury might not have happened at all. This made Kreltha even angrier. So now you are saying we need your equipment? That we must accept your violent ways? Captain Heejin stepped forward. No one is saying that. But we need to face facts. The cubs are interested in what they saw. They will try to copy it whether we allow mats or not. The question is whether we help them do it safely or leave them to hurt themselves. Vorthan shook his head firmly. The solution is simple. Remove all human martial arts practice from the ship. If the cubs do not see it, they will not try to copy it. That is not fair to the human crew, said Bora, the chief engineer. She was a practical woman who usually stayed out of politics, but this affected her team. Humans need physical exercise just like any species. We cannot ban them from their own cultural practices. Then practice in private, suggested a Trojan delegate. In closed rooms where cubs cannot observe. We already do practice in the gym, Daiho pointed out. But the cubs still saw it somehow. They are curious. Young beings of any species are curious. The argument continued for another hour. No one could agree on a solution. Some wanted the humans to stop all martial arts practice. Others wanted the cubs to be locked in their quarters when humans trained. A few even suggested separating human and alien living areas completely. Finally, Daiho spoke up with an idea he had been thinking about all night. What if I teach them properly? The room went silent. Everyone stared at him. Teach them? Vorthan repeated slowly. You want to teach alien cubs human combat? I want to teach them the right way, Daiho said. So they do not hurt themselves. So they understand what martial arts really means. Give me one chance. One supervised session. You can all watch. If you think it is too dangerous or inappropriate after that, I will never suggest it again. Sunho nodded thoughtfully. That seems reasonable. One demonstration session with full parental supervision. Absolutely not, Vorthan said immediately. I will allow my cub to attend, said Kreltha quietly. Everyone turned to look at her in surprise. She looked down at her injured cub who had stopped crying and was listening to the adults talk. My cub wants to learn. I saw the excitement in those eyes. If this human can teach safety along with the movements, perhaps the injury risk decreases. One session. I will watch. Other parents exchanged uncertain looks. Slowly, reluctantly, a few more agreed to let their cubs attend one demonstration. Vorthan stood abruptly. You are all fools. You invite danger into your families. But very well. I will attend this session, and when it proves to be the disaster I know it will be, we will remove all humans from positions involving our youth. Forever. The meeting ended with tension still thick in the air, but at least they had agreed to try something. As everyone filed out, Sunho approached Daiho privately. Do you know what you have done? The pressure is immense now. If one cub gets hurt during your demonstration, or if the session appears violent in any way, it will confirm every fear they have about humans. Daiho nodded. I know, but I also know this could help. Not just with the mat situation, but with how aliens see humans in general. One session to change the galaxy's view of humanity, Sunho said with a slight smile. No pressure at all. Daeho returned to his quarters that night with his mind racing. He had one chance to show aliens that humans were not the violent monsters they feared. One chance to prove that strength and discipline could coexist. One chance to build a bridge between species using nothing but patience, respect, and a few training mats. He hoped desperately that it would be enough. The main cargo bay had been transformed. Daeho had spent hours setting up the training mats, arranging them in a large square in the center of the space. Around the edges, chairs had been placed for the alien parents who would observe. Security cameras were positioned at multiple angles. Captain Hyejin wanted a complete record of everything that happened. Daeho wore his white dobok, the traditional taekwondo uniform. He had not worn it in months, and it felt good to have it on again. It reminded him of his teacher back on Earth, an old man who had taught him that true strength came from the mind, not the muscles. The cubs arrived first, escorted by their nervous parents. There were 12 younglings in total, representing 6 different species. The 2 Chilari cubs who had started everything bounced excitedly. 3 Hevran cubs, including the one who had been injured, moved more cautiously. 2 massive Trojan cubs lumbered in, each already larger than Daeho despite their youth. 4 Mrenthi cubs scuttled on their 6 legs, eyes wide with curiosity, and 1 tiny Farron cub floated in, held in a containment bubble filled with the methane atmosphere its species needed to breathe. Behind them came the parents, along with Vorthan, Ambassador Sunho, Captain Hyejin, and at least 20 other crew members who wanted to watch. The cargo bay quickly filled with spectators. Daeho felt his heart pound. So many eyes watching, so much depending on the next hour. Then he saw Ji-won enter with her parents. She was 8 years old, the only human child on the ship. Her parents worked in the navigation department. Ji-won wore a small dobok just like his, and her black belt was tied carefully around her waist. She had been practicing taekwondo since she was 5. Daeho had asked her parents if she could help with the demonstration. Seeing her confident smile now, he felt his own nervousness fade a little. "Thank you all for coming," Daeho said, his voice echoing in the large space. "Today I will show you what martial arts training really means. Please, cubs, come stand on the mats." The younglings rushed forward eagerly, their parents tensed, ready to intervene at the first sign of danger. "First lesson," Daeho said firmly. "We bow," he demonstrated, bending at the waist respectfully. Ji-won copied him perfectly. The cubs looked confused. "Bowing shows respect," Daeho explained. "In martial arts, we bow to our teachers. We bow to our training partners. We bow to show that even though we may practice fighting movements, we respect each other. We are not enemies. We are students learning together." Slowly, awkwardly, the cubs attempted to bow. The Trogian cubs bent their massive bodies forward. The Mrenthi cubs lowered their front legs. The Chilari cubs dipped their heads. Even the Farron cub inside its bubble tilted at an angle. Some of the alien parents whispered to each other. They had not expected a combat lesson to begin with a gesture of respect. "Good," Daeho said. "Now, before we learn any movements, we must learn to breathe." "Breathe?" one of the Hevran cubs asked. "But we already know how to breathe." "You know how to breathe without thinking," Daeho corrected gently. "Now I will teach you to breathe with intention, to breathe with control. This is the foundation of everything." He sat down on the mat in a cross-legged position. Ji-won did the same. The cubs copied them, settling onto the soft surface in various sitting positions suited to their different body types. "Close your eyes," Daeho instructed. "Breathe in slowly through your nose. Count to 4. Then breathe out slowly through your mouth. Count to 4 again. Focus only on your breathing." In the observation area, Vorthan leaned toward another elder. "This is ridiculous. When does the combat training begin?" But Captain Hyejin watched with interest. She had seen human martial artists train before. She knew this was not ridiculous at all. On the mats, something remarkable was happening. The cubs, who moments ago had been bouncing and chirping with uncontrolled energy, were becoming still. Their breathing slowed. Their bodies relaxed. Even the most energetic Chilari cub sat quietly, eyes closed, following Daeho's instructions. "Martial arts teaches patience," Daeho said softly. "It teaches you to control your body by first controlling your mind. If you cannot be patient, if you cannot be calm, you cannot learn properly. You will only hurt yourself or others." They practiced breathing for 10 minutes. Some of the alien parents shifted impatiently in their seats, wondering when the real demonstration would begin. But others watched their cubs with amazement. They had never seen their children so focused and calm. Now we will learn to fall safely, Daeho announced, standing up. This is very important. If you do not know how to fall, you will get hurt. But if you learn the right way, falling becomes safe. He demonstrated a simple forward roll, moving smoothly across the mat and coming up to his feet. Ji-won followed, her small body rolling perfectly. You see, we protect our head. We roll on our shoulder, not our neck. We use the soft part of our back. The mat cushions us. Like this, falling does not hurt. The cubs took turns attempting rolls. Many failed at first, tumbling awkwardly or rolling too fast. But Daeho moved from cub to cub, adjusting their positions gently, showing them how to tuck their heads, how to push off with their legs. It is okay to fail, he told a Trogian cub who had rolled too heavily and ended up on its back. Failure is part of learning. We try again. We improve. There is no shame in falling. Only in refusing to get back up. The cub tried again. This time, the roll was better. After 30 minutes, most of the cubs could perform a basic roll. Their parents watched with growing surprise. This did not look like combat training. It looked like safety training. Now I will teach you the most important lesson, Daeho said. We will practice with partners. He paired the cubs up carefully, making sure to match sizes appropriately. The two Chilari cubs were together. Each Trogian cub was paired with a Merenthi cub, since both species were larger. The Hevran cubs worked as a group of 3, which their social structure preferred. Face your partner. Bow to them, Daeho instructed. Now one cub will hold still. The other will practice a very gentle push. Not hard, gentle. The cub being pushed will practice falling safely backward. The mat will catch you. Ji-won demonstrated with one of the Chilari cubs. She pushed very lightly. The cub fell back onto the mat and rolled safely. Then you switch. The one who pushed now practices falling. The one who fell now practices pushing gently. You help each other learn. The cubs began practicing. Daeho walked among them, watching carefully. When one Trogian cub pushed too hard, he stopped immediately. Too much force, he said firmly but not angrily. Remember, your partner is helping you learn. You must help them, not hurt them. If you are stronger, you must be more careful. Strength means responsibility. The Trogian cub looked ashamed. I am sorry. Tell your partner, not me, Daeho said. The cub turned to its Merenthi partner. I am sorry I pushed too hard. The Merenthi cub touched its leg gently to the Trogian cub's arm. It is okay. We are learning together. In the observation area, Kreltha leaned forward in her seat. Her injured cub was practicing carefully with a partner, and both cubs were helping each other. They were not fighting. They were cooperating. Vorthen remained silent, his expression unreadable. The session continued. Daeho taught them basic blocking motions, not to hurt but to protect. He showed them stances that built balance and core strength. Every few minutes, he reminded them to bow to their partners, to say thank you, to show respect. When one small Hevran cub accidentally scratched another with its claws during a blocking practice, Daeho stopped everything immediately. The entire group of cubs sat down on the mats. What just happened? Daeho asked. I hurt my partner, the Hevran cub said quietly, scales flushing with embarrassment. Was it on purpose? No, it was an accident. Then what do you do? Daeho prompted. The cub turned to its partner. I am very sorry I hurt you. I did not mean to. Are you okay? The other cub nodded. I am okay. I know it was an accident. Daeho addressed all the cubs. This is the most important lesson. Martial arts give you power. Power to block, to push, to strike. But with power comes responsibility. You must always know your own strength. You must always control it. And when you make a mistake, because everyone makes mistakes, you must apologize and learn to do better. The alien parents were whispering more frequently now. The whispers did not sound angry. They sounded thoughtful. By the end of the hour, the cubs were tired but happy. They had learned to breathe, to fall, to work with partners, and to control their actions. More importantly, they had learned that different species could practice together safely, teaching each other and helping each other improve. Daeho gathered all the cubs together for a final bow. Thank you all for being good students today. Remember what you learned. Remember to be respectful, to be careful, and to help each other. The cubs bowed, some more gracefully than others. Then they ran to their parents, chattering excitedly about what they had learned. Vorthen approached Daeho slowly. The old alien studied him for a long moment. I was wrong, he said finally. I thought you were teaching violence, but you were teaching something else entirely. What was I teaching? Daiho asked. Discipline, Forthon replied. Respect, self-control, these are not violent lessons. These are the lessons every young being needs to learn. 3 weeks after the demonstration, the stellar horizon looked different. Training mats now occupied designated spaces throughout the ship. The largest area was still in the cargo bay, but smaller practice zones had been set up on decks 5, 7, and 9. Cubs could be seen at almost any hour, practicing their roles and stances under the supervision of parents or trained monitors. But something else had changed too. Something bigger. Minji had arrived on the ship 2 days ago. She was a martial arts instructor from Earth, who specialized in adapted training for different body types. When Ambassador Sunho reported what was happening on the stellar horizon, Earth Command sent her immediately. They recognized an opportunity when they saw one. Minji stood in the cargo bay now, observing a mixed group of cubs practicing together. She was a small woman with strong arms and a patient smile that reminded everyone of a favorite teacher. The Chilari cubs are very good at precision movements, she told Daiho as they watched. See how they can control exactly where their paws land? Their species has natural grace. Indeed, the 2 Chilari cubs were performing a blocking sequence Daiho had taught them. Their movements were sharp and accurate, each position held perfectly before flowing into the next. The Trojan cubs, on the other hand, have incredible strength, Minji continued. But they need to learn control. Watch. One Trojan cub was practicing push-ups. Its massive arms, each thicker than Daiho's leg, pushed its bulk up and down steadily. Beside it, a Merenthi cub attempted the same exercise using 4 of its 6 legs. The Merenthi could not push as hard, but it moved much faster. Different species, different strengths, Minji observed. We can teach techniques that work for each body type. The Merenthi, for example, they have 6 limbs. Imagine what they could do with blocking techniques designed specifically for 6 arms? Daiho nodded. I have been thinking about that, but I am not skilled enough to design new techniques. That is why I am here, Minji said with a smile. Let us teach them what their own bodies can really do. Over the following days, Minji worked with small groups of cubs, developing modifications for each species. The Chilari learned techniques that emphasize speed and precision. The Trojans learned to channel their strength into controlled, powerful movements. The Merenthi discovered that having 6 limbs meant they could block and strike simultaneously in ways that 2-limbed species never could. The Hevron cubs, with their natural climbing ability and flexible spines, learned aerial movements that looked almost like dancing. The tiny Farron cub, floating in its methane bubble, worked with Minji to develop a completely unique style, based on 3-dimensional movement rather than ground-based techniques. Parents watched these developments with fascination. What had started as a fear of human violence had transformed into something unexpected. Their cubs were not learning to be human. They were learning to be the best versions of themselves. But the most surprising development came from the adults. It started with Kreltha, the Hevron parent whose cub had been injured. She approached Daiho one evening after the cubs had finished training. I have been watching the cubs practice, she said. I see that they are becoming more confident. My cub no longer fears trying new things, and I wonder, could adults learn these techniques as well? Daiho was surprised. You want to train? I do, Kreltha said firmly. I see the discipline it teaches. The focus. I believe it could help me in my work. I am a cargo coordinator. I must stay calm when problems arise. I must make quick decisions. These skills you teach, they seem useful for more than just physical training. Within days, other adults expressed similar interest. A Chilari engineer wanted to improve her concentration. A Merenthi medical technician thought the breathing exercises could help with stress. 2 Trogian security officers asked if the training could help them learn better self-control in tense situations. Minji began teaching adult classes in the evenings. The cargo bay filled with aliens of all ages, practicing breathing exercises, performing careful strikes at training targets, and learning to fall safely. The adult classes were more serious than the cub sessions, with less playfulness but equal dedication. Daiho found himself teaching a class of cargo handlers from 4 different species. They were workers who spent long hours doing physically demanding jobs. The training helped them build strength and flexibility. More than that, it gave them something to focus on besides work, a practice that challenged them mentally and physically. I never expected this, Captain Hyejin told Daiho one evening. She had stopped by the cargo bay to watch an adult training session. I thought we would have one demonstration for cubs and that would be the end of it. Now we have dozens of crew members training regularly. It helps them, Daiho said simply. Martial arts can benefit anyone regardless of species. It is doing more than helping them exercise, Hyejin observed. Have you noticed the change in ship culture? Daiho had noticed. The ship felt different now. There were fewer arguments between crew members. When conflicts did arise, they were resolved more calmly and respectfully. Aliens from different species talked to each other more, having bonded through shared training experiences. The change was most obvious when an emergency occurred. A hull breach alarm sounded in the middle of a night shift. A micrometeorite had punctured the outer hull in Section 12. It was not a catastrophic breach, but it needed immediate repair before the leak became worse. The repair team that responded included members from 6 different species. They had to work together in cramped conditions, moving quickly while staying coordinated. In the past, such emergencies often led to confusion and conflict as different species tried to work in incompatible ways. But this time, something was different. The crew moved together smoothly. When the Trojan worker needed to access a tight space, the smaller Chilari worker immediately understood and moved aside without needing to be told. When the Mrenthi technician needed to hold 3 tools at once while positioning a patch, the Hevran worker passed items precisely where they were needed. They worked like partners in a training drill, aware of each other, communicating efficiently, trusting each other's abilities. The breach was sealed in record time. Later, when Captain Hyejin reviewed the repair footage, she called Daiho and Minji to her office. "Watch this," she said, playing the recording. "Look at how they moved together. That Trogian and Kilari pair, they trained together last week, did they not?" "They did," Minji confirmed. "We have been encouraging cross-species partner work." "It shows," Hyejin said. "They already understood how to work in each other's space. They knew each other's capabilities and limitations. The training built trust that transferred directly to emergency response." She paused the footage and looked at both instructors. "This is bigger than exercise classes. You are teaching my crew to function as a cohesive unit despite their differences. That is invaluable on a multi-species vessel." The ship's council met again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different from the first meeting. The same delegates who had demanded the removal of training mats now discussed expanding the program. "We should formalize this," suggested the Chilari representative. "Make martial arts training an official part of crew integration programs." "Agreed," said a Trogian delegate. "Our security teams have shown measurable improvement in conflict de-escalation since beginning training. Physical discipline translates to emotional discipline. Even Vorthan, who had been the strongest opponent, spoke in favor. I was wrong to call this violence training. It is peace training. It teaches beings to master themselves rather than to dominate others. This is wisdom we should embrace." Ambassador Sunho sat in the meeting with quiet satisfaction. He sent a report to Earth Command that night. "The stellar horizon has become an unexpected success story," he wrote. "What began as a cultural conflict over training mats has evolved into a model for interspecies cooperation. The ship's crew reports higher morale, better communication, and improved emergency response times, all because humans shared a cultural practice that aliens initially feared." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "I believe we have stumbled upon something important. Throughout the galaxy, humans are seen as dangerous, too strong, too aggressive, too unpredictable. But what if our so-called aggression is actually something else? What if it is simply energy that we have learned to channel productively? Other species avoid conflict by suppressing their natural impulses. Humans face conflict by mastering it. We do not pretend we are not capable of violence. Instead, we build systems, physical, mental, and cultural, to ensure that capability is controlled and directed appropriately. The martial arts are just one expression of this approach. But they demonstrate a truth about humanity that we have struggled to communicate. We are not violent despite our discipline. We are peaceful because of our discipline. The stellar horizon is proof that this human approach can benefit other species too. Perhaps our greatest contribution to galactic civilization is not our technology or our strength, but our understanding of how to live with both." Sunho finished his report and sent it. Within weeks, requests came from other ships. They wanted human martial arts instructors. They wanted to try this peace training with their own crews. The training mats that had caused such concern were now spreading across the galaxy, one ship at a time. 6 months had passed since the Chilari Cubs first discovered the training mats. The stellar horizon was now famous across known space. Other ship captains called it the Harmony vessel, and everyone wanted to know the secret of its success. The secret, of course, was no secret at all. It was simply mats, practice, and patience. But the impact had spread far beyond one ship. Daiho stood in the cargo bay watching the newest training session. The group practicing today included cubs, adults, and several visitors from other vessels who had come specifically to observe the program. Among them was a delegation from a military transport ship that had experienced serious discipline problems. They wanted to see if human training methods could help. Minji led the session now. Over the months, she had trained several assistant instructors from different species. A Kalari named Silith taught the precision techniques. A Trogian called Breck specialized in strength training. A Merenthi named Thress had developed an entirely new style of six-limbed martial arts that human instructors were now studying with fascination. The martial arts were evolving. They were no longer just human practices being taught to aliens. They were becoming something new. A shared discipline that incorporated the strengths and philosophies of multiple species. Jiwan, the young human girl, sat on the edge of the mats with a group of cubs. She was teaching them about breathing meditation, speaking slowly so the universal translators could keep up. When you feel angry or scared, you can use your breathing to help, she explained. You breathe in, count to 4, breathe out, count to 4. Do this 10 times. Your body will calm down. Then your mind can think clearly again. A small Heveran cub raised its claw. Does this work for adult-sized problems? Jiwan smiled. My mom uses it before important meetings. She says it works for any sized problem. The cub nodded thoughtfully and went back to practicing the breathing pattern. Watching from nearby, a Chilari mother spoke quietly to Daiho. My cub has changed so much. Before training, every small problem felt like a disaster. Crying, tantrums, refusing to try difficult things. Now when something is hard, the cub breathes and tries again. The confidence I see is remarkable. The confidence comes from mastering themselves, Daiho said. When cubs learn they can control their bodies and emotions, they start believing they can handle other challenges too. It is not just cubs, the mother admitted. I have changed as well. I am an engineer. My work is often stressful. Before training, I would panic when systems failed. Now I breathe, I focus, and I solve problems calmly. My supervisor says my work quality has improved significantly. Stories like this had become common. All across the ship, crew members reported positive changes. Better sleep, less anxiety, improved relationships, more patience with difficult tasks. Captain Hyejin tracked the statistics carefully. Medical bay visits for stress-related issues had dropped by 40%. Interpersonal conflicts requiring mediation had decreased by 60%. Emergency response times had improved by 25%. But the most remarkable statistic was the one she shared in her report to Fleet Command. 0 serious interpersonal conflicts between crew members of different species in the past 4 months. This is unprecedented on a vessel of this size and diversity. The report caught attention at the highest levels of galactic government. A formal delegation arrived from the Interspecies Cooperation Council. They wanted to see the training program themselves and evaluate whether it could be recommended for other vessels. The delegation included representatives from 8 different species, including some who had never met humans before. They arrived with skepticism. Humans still had a reputation throughout the galaxy. Strong, aggressive, unpredictable. These words still appeared in most species' files about humanity. Ambassador Sunho greeted them personally. He had stayed on the stellar horizon specifically for this visit, knowing how important it was. Welcome, he said warmly. Thank you for coming. We are honored to share our program with you. The lead delegate, a Vrelian named Torth, got straight to business. We have read the reports. They seem exaggerated. No program can change ship culture this dramatically in such a short time. I would have agreed with you 6 months ago, Captain Hyejin said. But I see the evidence every day. Come, let us show you. They toured the training areas, observing classes of different skill levels. In one area, cubs practiced roles and basic stances. In another, Intermediate students worked on more complex forms and partner drills. In a third, advanced practitioners sparred carefully under supervision, demonstrating techniques adapted for their specific body types. The delegates watched silently. Torth made notes on a data pad, expression unreadable. Finally, they reached the main cargo bay where Minji was teaching a mixed class of adults from 7 species. The lesson today focused on conflict resolution through physical practice. Pair up, Minji instructed. One partner will apply gentle pressure, a push or a pull. The other partner will practice redirecting that pressure rather than resisting it. The goal is not to fight against your partner, but to guide their energy in a different direction. The crew members paired up. A large Trogian partnered with a small Chilari. The size difference was extreme, but when the Trogian pushed, the Chilari did not try to push back. Instead, the small alien stepped to the side and used the Trogian's own momentum to guide them gently past. Good, Minji said. Now switch roles. The Chilari pushed against the Trogian's massive chest. Obviously, the small alien could not move the larger one by force. But instead of stopping, the Chilari went low and pushed at the Trogian's knee. The larger alien instinctively shifted weight, and in that moment the Chilari guided them into a different stance. This is the philosophy, Minji explained to the class. When someone comes at you with aggression or pressure, you do not have to meet force with force. You can redirect, you can change the direction of the conflict. This works in physical training, but it also works in arguments, in negotiations, in any kind of disagreement. Delegate Torth set down the data pad. This is not what I expected. I expected to see combat training. Fighting techniques. We do teach those, Deho said, joining the group. But only after students learn control, respect, and redirection. Fighting is the last thing we teach, not the first. Why teach it at all, then? Another delegate asked. Why not focus only on the peaceful aspects? Sunho answered this time. Because ignoring the capacity for conflict does not make beings peaceful. It just makes them unprepared. Humans learned long ago that acknowledging our ability to be dangerous is the first step toward choosing not to be. We teach martial arts not to make people fighters, but to make them masters of themselves. The delegation spent 3 days on the ship, observing classes and interviewing crew members. They spoke with cubs who had been training since the beginning. They talked to adults who had joined later. They reviewed medical records, conflict reports, and performance evaluations. On the final day, they met with Captain Heejin and the human instructors. Torth spoke for the group. We came here expecting to find evidence that humans were spreading dangerous practices. We were prepared to recommend restricting human cultural activities on multi-species vessels. Heejin kept her expression neutral, waiting. Instead, Torth continued, we found something remarkable. You have not made these aliens more human. You have made them more themselves. The Chilari cubs have become more graceful. The Trogian adults have become gentler despite their strength. The Merenthi workers have discovered capabilities in their own bodies they never knew existed. He paused, looking at his fellow delegates, who all made gestures of agreement in their various species ways. We will recommend that the Interspecies Cooperation Council endorse this program. Furthermore, we will encourage other vessels to establish similar training programs, and we will formally apologize to the human delegation for the initial characterization of your species as dangerously aggressive. Sunho bowed respectfully. We appreciate that, but no apology is necessary. Our reputation was earned by our actions over centuries. Changing that reputation takes time and understanding. We are grateful for the opportunity to show another side of humanity. There is one more thing, Torth said. The Council would like to feature your program at the upcoming Galactic Youth Conference. It is the largest gathering of young beings from across known space. We believe a demonstration could inspire other communities to embrace similar practices. Minji looked at Deho with excitement. This was a huge opportunity. We would be honored, Captain Heejin said. Who would you like to demonstrate? The cubs, of course, Torth replied. Specifically, we would like young Jiwan to present. An 8-year-old human teaching aliens how to find peace through discipline. It sends a powerful message about the next generation. 2 months later, Jiwon stood on a stage in front of thousands of young beings from hundreds of worlds. She wore her white dobok with the black belt tied carefully around her waist. Behind her, 12 cubs from the stellar horizon stood in formation. Kilari, Hevron, Trogian, Merenthi, Farron, and even a young Vrelian who had joined the program after Torth's visit. The massive auditorium was silent as she began to speak. "My name is G1. I am from Earth,"